it's Lesley from Hungry Heffy Crafts, and today I have a card and it says, "You are Turtley the best." I love a good pun, don't you? So this stamp set is from Fawn. It's called Critters of the Sea, and it was one of my first Fawn stamp sets, and I still absolutely love it. When I started getting into my Copic markers, I had stamped a bunch of these images, and I just sat in front of the TV and started colouring and playing away. So here I have a few sea creatures that are already stamped, already fussy cut and coloured in with my Copic markers, and I thought that I would make a card that so that I could use them. So I pulled out one of my dies from my stash, and this is a Tim Holtz, I think it's called Flourish die set, and I wanted an aperture of this top label shape. I really love that shape, but because both of the shapes of the dies are on the one piece, it's really hard to just get that Flourish die without having the other one encroach upon it. So this is how I got around it. I cut out with a piece of cardstock the flourish like this, and then I used that flourish to find the center of a folded note card. And I'm going to hold that in place just on one side with a little piece of post-it note tape. Then I'll take the negative of my die cut, line it up around the die cut piece, then remove the inside. And I find this is a lot easier way than just using the negative space, because it cuts on a bit of an angle, that die. So once I've got the negative in place, I'm going to trace around the inside of the aperture using a mechanical pencil, then come back in with a craft knife to slowly cut along my pencil line. And once I've gone all the way around, I will have a perfect aperture on the front of my note card. I'm going to go back in with an eraser and rub away any of those pencil lines, and now I have an aperture on the front of my card. So the plan is to create a coloured panel to go behind this aperture. So I'm taking another card blank, and I'm going to use some washi tape to mask off the top section of the card, and this gives me a nice crisp edge when I'm inking. And I'm using my mini blending foam tool to bring in some distressing, and I'm using the Salty Ocean colour here and focusing mainly on the outside edges, and then bringing some colour into the middle as well with that Salty Ocean colour. Next I'm going to be bringing in some Cracked Pistachio. This is one of my most favourite colours, and I'm bringing it into the centre and blending it with that little bit of Salty Ocean. And you can see I've got my two foam applicators there, and I'll be going back and forth using both of them to blend the colours together. And this gives a really nice even coverage on the middle. So the middle section is what we will see through the aperture. So I'm not really worrying about adding a lot of the Cracked Pistachio to the outside edge, but I am going to come back in with another colour, a third colour, which is Evergreen Brow, and that will give a little bit more depth into this middle section. I don't need a lot, just a little tiny bit. So now that my inking is done, I'm going to remove the washi tape along the top, and I'll have a really nice crisp edge because I've masked off the top of my inking panel. I'm actually going to trim this down and stick this whole panel onto the front of a note card, and I'm using my ATG gun for that. And I line up the bottom edge of the note card and the inked panel on my work surface and use my fingers to smoosh them together. So for my aperture panel, I'm going to trim all four edges by about 1/8 of an inch. And that means whenever I add it on top of my inked panel, there'll be a really nice border all around the four edges of the card to create a frame. So now I'm going to move on to stamping the outside of the card, and I'm using Fawn's Milo ABC stamp set, and I love a good pun. So I've got a turtle image for this card, so I thought I would make the greeting on the front of the card to say you are Turtley the best, which I think is hilarious. So here we are, I'm lining up my stamps, and when I create a word myself, I always test it on a scratch piece of paper first of all, before stamping it on the real thing, to make sure I've spelt it correctly mostly. And I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Doll Pink ink for that. I'm going to be using this stamp set as well that says You Are Simply the Best from Technique Tuesday, but I'm just using the You Are and then the best, so it will read You Are Turtley the Best. So now let's get these little guys lined up so I can see where I want the greeting to go. And I knew I wanted some of the little fish tucked behind the aperture and then one sitting on top. So I've decided to go for the little seahorse to go on top. For this stamp, I'm using washi tape to mask off the word Simply in the middle. Ink up my stamp, then remove the washi tape, and I will just have ink on the bits that I really want. I've done the UR and I wasn't sure if I'd cleaned the stamp properly, so I put a scratch piece of paper underneath while I stamped the best section, as I didn't want to ruin the card. So now I'm going to go back to that background panel, and because I've used Distress inks, the great thing is that I can reactivate the ink and that will give it a more underwater feel. I've got some water mixed with Perfect Pearls in a mister bottle here, and I'm spritzing the panel and then flicking on some water droplets. And where the water droplets hit the ink, it starts to wick up the ink and creates these really cool bubbly bubble effect. It gives it lots of texture and it really does look like an underwater scene. To mount the front panel, I'm using some craft foam today, and I'm going to just trace around the aperture and then use a pair of scissors to cut down the foam so it's slightly larger than the aperture on the card, and I'll stick that on there using my ATG gun and then stick that onto the front panel of the card. Now all I need to do is to get my critters all lined up and position them in the places that I want them to be for the final card. And I know I'm going to be sticking some of them straight onto the background, and I'm using a Zig 2-way glue pen for that. But the little turtle I'm going to be raising up with some foam pads, and I thought that he was missing a little bit of an accessory. So I've stamped, coloured and die cut this little party hat from the Hippo Birdie 2U stamp set, also from Fawn. And there we go, there's the card complete. I love the way the background is really shimmery with the Perfect Pearls, and it really does give a watery feeling. And hey, who doesn't love a good pun? And you know what? I think you guys are totally the best. Have a great day, and please do give me a thumbs up if you liked the video today. Ciao!